Danny Kaye was an American actor, singer, dancer, comedian, and musician. His performances featured physical comedy, idiosyncratic pantomimes, and rapid-fire novelty songs. Kaye starred in 17 movies, notably Wonder Man, The Kid from Brooklyn, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, The Inspector General, Hans Christian Andersen, White Christmas, and The Court Jester. His films were popular, especially his bravura performances of patter songs and favorites such as Inchworm and The Ugly Duckling. He was the first ambassador-at-large of UNICEF in 1954 and received the French Legion of Honor in 1986 for his years of work with the organization. Early years. David Daniel Kaminsky was born to Ukrainian Jewish immigrants in Brooklyn on January 18, 1911. Kaye was the youngest of three sons born to Jacob and Clara Nemirovsky Kaminsky. Jacob and Clara and their two sons, Larry and Mac, left Yekaterinoslav 2 years before his birth. He was the only son born in the United States. He attended public school 149 in East New York, Brooklyn, which eventually was renamed to honor him, where he began entertaining his classmates with songs and jokes, before moving to Thomas Jefferson High School, though he never graduated. His mother died when he was in his early teens. Not long after his mother's death, Kaye and his friend Louis ran away to Florida. Kaye sang while Louis played the guitar. The pair eked out a living for a while. When Kaye returned to New York, his father did not pressure him to return to school or work, giving his son the chance to mature and discover his own abilities. Kaye said that as a young boy he had wanted to be a surgeon, but there was no chance of the family affording a medical school education. He held a succession of jobs after leaving school, as a soda jerk, insurance investigator, and office clerk. Most ended with his being fired. He lost the insurance job when he made an error that cost the insurance company $40,000. The dentist who hired him to look after his office at lunch hour did the same when he found Kaye using his drill on the office woodwork. He learned his trade in his teenage years in the Catskills as a tumbler in the Borscht Belt. Kaye's first break came in 1933 when he joined the Three Terpsichoreans, a vaudeville dance act. They opened in Utica, New York, where he used the name Danny Kaye for the first time. The act toured the United States, then performed in Asia with the show La Vie Paris. The troupe left for a 6-month tour of the Far East on February 8, 1934. While they were in Osaka, Japan, a typhoon hit the city. The hotel where Kaye and his colleagues stayed suffered heavy damage. A piece of the hotel's cornice was hurled into Kaye's room by the strong wind, nearly killing him. By performance time that evening, the city was in the grip of the storm. There was no power, and the audience was restless and nervous. To calm him, Kaye went on stage, holding a flashlight to illuminate his face, and sang every song he could recall as loudly as he was able. The experience of trying to entertain audiences who did not speak English inspired him to the pantomime, gestures, songs, and facial expressions that eventually made his reputation. Sometimes he found pantomime necessary when ordering a meal. Kaye's daughter, Dina, tells a story her father related about being in a restaurant in China and trying to order chicken. Kaye flapped his arms and clucked, giving the waiter an imitation of a chicken. The waiter nodded in understanding, bringing Kaye 2 eggs. His interest in cooking began on the tour. When Kaye returned to the United States, jobs were in short supply and he struggled for bookings. One job was working in a burlesque revue with fan dancer Sally Rand. After the dancer dropped a fan while trying to chase away a fly, Kaye was hired to watch the fans so they were always held in front of her. Career. Danny Kaye made his film debut in a 1935 comedy short Moon Over Manhattan. In 1937 he signed with New York-based Educational Pictures for a series of 2 rail comedies. Kaye usually played a manic, dark-haired, fast-talking Russian in these low-budget shorts, opposite young hopefuls June Allison or Imogen Coker. The Kaye series ended abruptly when the studio shut down in 1938. He was working in the Catskills in 1937 under the name Danny Colburn. His next venture was a short-lived Broadway show, with Sylvia Fine as the pianist, lyricist and composer. The Straw Hat Revue opened on September 29, 1939, and closed after 10 weeks, but critics took notice of Kaye's work. The reviews brought an offer for both Kaye and his bride, Sylvia, to work at La Martinique, a New York City nightclub. Kaye performed with Sylvia as his accompanist. At La Martinique, playwright Moss Hart saw Danny perform, which led to Hart casting him in his hit Broadway comedy Lady in the Dark. Kaye scored a triumph at age 30 in 1941, playing Russell Paxton in Lady in the Dark, starring Gertrude Lawrence. His show-stopping number was Tchaikovsky, by Kurt Weill and Ira Gershwin, in which he sang the names of a string of Russian composers at breakneck speed, seemingly without taking a breath. In the next Broadway season, he was the star of a show about a young man who is drafted, called Let's Face It. His feature film debut was in producer Samuel Goldwyn's Technicolor 1944 comedy Up in Arms, a remake of Goldwyn's Eddie Cantor comedy Whoopee. Rival producer Robert M. Savini cashed in by compiling 3 of Kaye's educational pictures shorts into a patchwork feature, The Birth of a Star. Studio mogul Goldwyn wanted Kaye's prominent nose fixed to look less Jewish. Kaye refused but did allow his red hair to be dyed blonde, apparently because it looked better in Technicolor. Kaye starred in a radio program, The Danny Kaye Show, on CBS in 1945-46. The program's popularity rose quickly. Before a year, he tied with Jimmy Durante for 5th place in the Radio Daily popularity poll. Kaye was asked to participate in a USO tour following the end of World War II. It meant that he would be absent from his radio show for nearly 2 months at the beginning of the season. Kaye's friends filled in, with a different guest host each week. Kaye was the first American actor to visit post-war Tokyo. He had toured there some 10 years before with the vaudeville troupe. When Kaye asked to be released from his radio contract in mid-1946, he agreed not to accept a regular radio show for 1 year and only limited guest appearances on other radio programs. Many of the show's episodes survive today, notable for Kaye's opening, signature, patter. Kaye starred in several movies with actress Virginia Mayo in the 1940s, and is known for films such as The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, The Inspector General, On the Riviera co-starring Gene Tierney, Knock on Wood, White Christmas, The Court Jester, and Mary Andrew. Kaye starred in 2 pictures based on biographies, Hans Christian Andersen the Danish Storyteller, and The 5 Pennies about jazz pioneer Red Nichols. His wife, writer, lyricist Sylvia Fine, wrote many tongue-twisting songs for which Kaye became famous. She was an associate producer. Some of Kaye's films included the theme of doubles, 2 people who look identical being mistaken for each other, to comic effect. Kaye teamed with the popular Andrews Sisters on Decca Records in 1947, producing the number 3 Billboard smash hit, Civilization. The success of the pairing prompted both acts to record through 1950, producing several hits, including the Woody Woodpecker song. While his wife wrote Kaye's material, there was much that was unwritten, springing from the mind of Danny Kaye, often while performing. His wife Sylvia described the Kaplan character. He doesn't have any first name. Even his wife calls him just Kaplan. He's an illiterate, pompous character who advertises his philanthropies. Jack Benny or Shari might say, Kaplan, why do you hate unions so? If Danny feels like doing Kaplan that night, he might be off on Kaplan for 2 hours. When he appeared at the London Palladium in 1948, he roused the royal family to laughter and was the first of many performers who have turned British variety into an American preserve. Life magazine described his reception as worshipful hysteria and noted that the royal family for the first time, left the royal box to watch from the front row of the orchestra. He related that he had no idea of the familial connections when the Marquess of Milford Haven introduced himself after a show and said he would like his cousins to see Kaye perform. Kaye stated he never returned to the venue because there was no way to recreate the magic of that time. Kaye had an invitation to return to London for a Royal Variety performance in November of the same year. When the invitation arrived, Kaye was busy with the Inspector General. Warners stopped the film to allow their star to attend. When his Decca co-workers, the Andrews sisters, began their engagement at the London Palladium on the heels of Kaye's successful 1948 appearance there, the trio was well received, and David Lewin of the Daily Express declared, "The audience gave the Andrews sisters the Danny Kaye roar." He hosted the 24th Academy Awards in 1952. The program was broadcast on radio. Telecasts of the Oscar ceremony came later. During the 1950s, Kaye visited Australia, where he played Buttons in a production of Cinderella in Sydney. In 1953, Kaye started a production company, Dina Pictures, named for his daughter. Knock on Wood was the first film produced by his firm. The firm expanded into television in 1960 under the name Belmont Television. Kaye entered television in 1956 on the CBS show See It Now with Edward R. Murrow. The Secret Life of Danny Kaye combined his 50,000-mile 10-country tour as UNICEF ambassador with music and humor. His first solo effort was in 1960 with an hour special produced by Sylvia and sponsored by General Motors, with similar specials in 1961 and 1962. He hosted a variety hour on CBS television, The Danny Kaye Show, from 1963 to 67, which won 4 Emmy Awards and a Peabody Award. Beginning in 1964, he acted as television host to the CBS telecast of MGM's The Wizard of Oz. Kaye did a stint as a What's My Line? Mystery guest on the Sunday night CBS TV quiz program. Kaye was later a guest panelist on that show. He also appeared on the NBC interview program Here's Hollywood. In the 1970s, Kaye tore a ligament in his leg in the run of the Richard Rodgers musical, 2x2, but went on with the show, appearing with his leg in a cast and cavorting on stage in a wheelchair. He had done much the same on his television show in 1964 when his right leg and foot were burned from a cooking accident. Camera shots were planned so television viewers did not see Kaye in his wheelchair. In 1976, he played Mr. Geppetto in a television musical adaptation of The Adventures of Pinocchio with Sandy Duncan in the title role. Kaye portrayed Captain Hook opposite Mia Farrow in a musical version of Peter Pan featuring songs by Anthony Newley and Leslie Bricusse. It was shown on NBC TV in December 1976, the Hallmark Hall of Fame series. He later guest-starred in episodes of The Muppet Show, The Cosby Show and in the 1980s revival of New Twilight Zone. In many films, as well as on stage, Kaye proved to be an able actor, singer, dancer and comedian. He showed his serious side as ambassador for UNICEF and in his dramatic role in the memorable TV film Skokie, when he played a Holocaust survivor. Before his death in 1987, Kaye conducted an orchestra during a comical series of concerts organized for UNICEF fundraising. Kaye received 2 Academy Awards, an Academy Honorary Award in 1955 and the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award in 1982. That year he also received the Screen Actors Guild Annual Award. In 1980, Kaye hosted and sang in the 25th anniversary of Disneyland Celebration, and hosted the opening celebration for Epcot in 1982. Both were aired on primetime television in the U.S. Career in music. Kaye was enamored of music. While he claimed an inability to read music, he was said to have perfect pitch. A flamboyant performer with his own distinctive style, easily adapting from outrageous novelty songs to tender ballads. In 1945, Kaye began hosting his own CBS radio program, launching a number of hit songs, including Dinah and Minnie the Moocher. In 1947, Kaye teamed with the popular Andrews Sisters on Decca Records, producing the number 3 Billboard hit, Civilization. The success of the pairing prompted both acts to record through 1950, producing rhythmically comical fare as the Woody Woodpecker song, Put M in a Box, Tie M with a Ribbon, the Big Brass Band from Brazil, It's a Quiet Town, Amelia Cordelia Mahue, Chinga Rasa, and a duet by Danny and Patty Andrews of Orange-Colored Sky. The acts teamed for 2 Yuletide favorites: a frantic, harmonic rendition of A Merry Christmas at Grandmother's House, and a duet by Danny and Patty, All I Want for Christmas Is My 2 Front Teeth. Kaye's self-titled debut album was released in 1949 by Columbia Records, with songs performed to the accompaniment of Morris Abravanel and Johnny Green. The album, described by the critic Bruce Eder as a bit tamer than some of the stuff that Kaye hit with later in the 40s and in the 50s, failed to attract nearly the interest of his kids' records and overt comedy routines. 1950 saw the release of a single, I've Got a Lovely Bunch of Coconuts, his sole big U.S. chart hit, and the second album Danny Kaye Entertains, a more diverse collection, with Kaye going through a set of that made him famous on the radio and in his early movies, most notably Tchaikovsky. Following the success of the film Hans Christian Andersen, 2 of its songs, written by Frank Loesser and sung by Kaye, The Ugly Duckling and Wonderful Copenhagen, reached the top 5 on the UK pop charts. In 1953, Decca released Danny at the Palace, a live recording made at the New York Palace Theatre, followed by Knock on Wood, a set of songs from the movie of the same name, sung by Kaye, accompanied by Victor Young and his singing strings. In 1956, Kaye signed a 3-year recording contract with Capitol Records, which released his single, Love Me Do, in December of that year. The B-side, CIU Bella, lyrics written by Sylvia Fine, was inspired by an episode in Rome when Kaye, on a mission for the UNICEF, befriended a 7-year-old polio victim in a children's hospital who sang this song for him in Italian. In 1958, Saul Chaplin and Johnny Mercer wrote songs for Merry Andrew, a film starring Kaye as a British teacher attracted to the circus. The score added up to 6 numbers, all sung by Kaye. Conductor Billy May's 1950 composition, Bozo's Circus Band, was deposited on the second side of the Merry Andrew soundtrack, released in 1958. A year later another soundtrack came out, The Five Pennies, featuring Louis Armstrong. In the 1960s and 1970s, Kaye hosted his own television variety program and had enormous success on Broadway. He couldn't read a note of music, learning the scores by ear, but regularly conducted world-famous orchestras. Kaye's style, even if accompanied by unpredictable antics, was praised by the likes of Zubin Mehta, who once stated that Kaye has a very efficient conducting style. His ability with an orchestra was mentioned by Dimitri Mitropoulos, then conductor of the New York Philharmonic Orchestra. After Kaye's appearance, Mitropoulos remarked, "Here is a man who is not musically trained, who cannot even read music, and he gets more out of my orchestra than I have." Kaye was invited to conduct symphonies as charity fundraisers and was the conductor of the All-City Marching Band at the season opener of the Los Angeles Dodgers in 1984. Over his career he raised over US $5 million in support of musician pension funds. Imitations. Kaye was sufficiently popular to inspire imitations. The 1946 Warner Brothers Cartoon Book Review had a sequence with Daffy Duck impersonating Kaye singing Carolina in the Morning with the Russian accent that Kaye affected from time to time. Satirical songwriter Tom Lehrer's 1953 song Lobachevsky was based on a number that Kaye had done about the Russian director Konstantin Stanislavski, with the affected Russian accent. Lehrer mentioned Kaye in an opening monologue, citing him as an idol since childbirth. Superman creators Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster fashioned a short-lived superhero title, Funnyman, taking inspiration from Kaye's persona.